Welcome to Beyond Tech, where innovation meets insight. I'm your host, Jackie Slatt. Today, I'm joined by Eric Medicke, Director of IT/OT Solutions, and Kevin Romer, Solutions Architect at eTech Group. Eric and Kevin previously led our popular AI Ready or Not live session, and today we're continuing that conversation. We'll explore the real barriers that can prevent organizations from successfully adopting AI and answer a few additional questions that came out of that live session. If you missed that live session, don't worry, you can still watch it on demand for even more context and technical insights. We've included a link in the episode description. With that, let's dive in and get started. So I want to thank Eric and Kevin. Thank you guys for joining us today. I very much enjoyed the live session. I'm excited to have you guys continue to talk about it. So I want to see what outcomes are manufacturers hoping to get with AI? What do they think it will improve, and what's the most common request?
So in a lot of cases, customers are expecting to improve their efficiencies and that type of thing, understand more of what's going on, what they can improve on their system. That's what they typically are wanting to get. So they know where to invest to improve. That's the big one.
I think what Kevin said there pretty much sums it up. That's what people are looking to do. I mean, that's the reason they invest in AI. They want to, because our people are aging out and there's a lack of resources. So the ability to have AI to help them to do predictive maintenance, things of that nature, or to make changes in their production environments.
Yeah. So I know AI has been the topic for, I feel like, years now. Everybody has been talking about it. Everybody wants it. But despite all of the excitement around AI, I've heard that a lot of AI initiatives stall before they really get implemented. Why is that?
Well, I'll be honest. I think a lot of the people's AI initiatives get stopped before they can even start, because they find out that the infrastructure that they have doesn't really support everything. The infrastructures are aging. We talked a little bit about, the people that have make the plants work today. They've been able to keep the infrastructures, piecemeal together, we'll call it. But then, when they try to add more stuff onto these networks, things of that nature, they find out that it's too congested, or they can't do it, or they're out of IP addresses, or like all different types of factors, right, that we understand and know about when it comes to infrastructure. And so it puts the brakes on it very, very quickly, because they don't have the segmentation and the security and all the things that are required to be AI ready.
The infrastructure is one of the biggest ones. There's some other stuff where when it comes to the actual PLCs and those type of things, legacy, when you're dealing with legacy equipment, some things can't really handle it. Things are at their limits, all mostly comes down to infrastructure though.
Yeah, one of the things, this isn't really infrastructure, but I just want to touch on it because I think it's something that I feel like you guys have both brought up already, is that part of what manufacturers are dealing with right now is there's a lot of tribal knowledge that's either aging out, or they can't kind of get the newer people coming in up to speed, or they just kind of know if something's not working because they have that experience of years and years of knowledge and kind of making things work. If they can get the infrastructure, how can AI help take that tribal knowledge and bring it to something that everybody can use?
So understanding what's there, starting with like an assessment, to try to build a where you are now, just to understand where we are at this point and where can we go in the future and that kind of thing. So a lot of people don't understand where they are right now, and an assessment really helps out with doing something like that.
One of the things I think we also talked about in the live session was, what does it mean when a manufacturer thinks or says that they are AI ready? And what could they be overlooking if they think they're AI ready, but maybe they're not actually quite there yet?
I think some of the manufacturers, some of the plants, and some of the people we've seen feel like they're AI ready because they think they have the correct infrastructure. They feel like they're on a different path because they've made that convergence between IT and OT, and they think that they're ready to go. Unfortunately, the networks are no different than the highway at rush hour, right? We don't want rush hour traffic. Nobody wants to be stuck in rush hour, and we don't want rush hour on our networks in the OT side of the facilities, right? And this is where the gap is, right? They don't have all the segmentation. They don't have things being laid out properly. They have high utilization on their networks, things like that they're just not in tune to. They don't realize it, and so they think that they're ready. They think they're AI ready. They think they have connectivity to a lot of things that may exist in their facilities, but they've not gone down that road of truly assessing things like Kevin mentioned earlier. And if you have somebody come in and do an assessment, understand what's talking to what devices are out there, and understand what devices may or may not even be connected to your network to give you that ability to get that stuff connected. And that's part of the problem with people who think they're AI ready, is they don't have the connectivity that they think they have because they haven't really done a true assessment or evaluation of what's currently out there.
One of the things that I took away from the live session was how important it is to, I think what people want to get out of AI and to make it as effective as it can be is really having the data set up. And if you don't have good data coming out of it, you can't really take all the advantages of the results it can show you of like, this is what might happen because we have all this data. But if you have equipment that's not on the network or, by itself, that's going to give you the wrong information. Is that correct?
Yeah. So what happens there is basically a lot of systems that have been put in place over the years have different vendors with different styles of doing different things, right? And a lot of times you'll get different types of metrics or information doesn't line up with something else. And so you have to do a lot of post-processing to try to line up that data so you have a consistency across the board so that you can actually normalize all the lines or equipment or whatever it is that you're doing for process, and understand in the process what is actually the weak link of the process. So it takes having the right data put in, and sometimes a lot of cases, their plant might be connected and they have HMIs and they have OE displays even, but they may not have all the other information that you need to have a proper AI evaluation of your system.
This is kind of just a fun question, but I want to see what you guys say. What are the biggest warning signs that facility may be displaying if they are not ready for AI? What would the facility look like?
I guess warning signs, I don't know, Kevin can help out here, but I think one of the warning signs is people that have connectivity that's intermittent, or warning signs where, hey, everything out here in the plant's working, but, I don't know, once a month we have to shut things down and cycle the power and, hey, it's up and running again, and we have that kind of a thing going on. Things like that, anomalies, really weird things that happen. And it usually 99% of the time stems back to infrastructure, how things are wired, the types of cabling, how it's done. And that's really the foundational piece of the puzzle that we've been trying to explain to people, that if you don't have the right infrastructure at the end of the day, you can't build the thing.
Unexplained downtime is another one. If they can't look back at something and say, this is what actually caused that downtime, and they definitively know what that is, why that happened, and then how they're going to improve it, or they work with it and understand that that's what the problem is and they want to fix it in the future. If they don't have that information, then a lot of times people will just blame the network because that's something people typically can't see. It's a common thing to go to on that. Some other flags, like Eric was saying, is when you hear one thing from one department, but go on site and talk with the people that are actually keeping the system running, and you get a completely different picture. We've seen that before too, and that's kind of it comes down to human communication in some of those cases, and that's where we try to bring everyone together to understand where everything's at, and then what we could do in the future to them.
It's one of the things, Kevin, I think you and I, like years ago, were talking and working on a different project where I just love the way you explained it, that the IT and the OT teams have completely different languages and priorities that they're trying to both work towards. And I think where a lot of the challenges come by is that these two teams need to work together, but they have very different priorities and just how they communicate. So that is, I think, something else that I believe you guys are still seeing out in the field, is that these two teams, getting them on the same page is still a challenge.
I say it's challenging, but we're seeing more and more people and more companies every day collaborating more with their IT departments, where we've had a lot of rub between IT and OT in the past. I think we're starting to see a little more of that because IT is up against all the compliance regulations, things like that are needed from a cybersecurity standpoint, all the things that they're required to report on to make sure that they can get that cyber insurance for the company. And I think you're finding more and more people that are in the OT space finding out that they're starting to learn what IT needs, and OT is learning, and then IT is learning the opposite. They're learning what OT's needs are. So there's been cases where we see more collaboration, and then there's cases where we still see people who are butting heads, we'll call it, and where we get involved. We understand, we help them. So we understand both sides of the fence at the end of the day. And once we understand what the initiatives are, the OT environment, and what are things on their agenda, the things that they want to get done, then we usually ask for a meeting and try to get IT involved. And what we do there is then we start off by understanding and asking IT, what is it that IT is doing to support the plant? What are they up against? And by understanding that and knowing what we know on the OT side and how to support them, then we can work to start bridging the gaps. Because a lot of times the two parties don't understand what each party's agendas are. And because that's our expertise, that's how we can easily go after this and help both sides.
That's a really good point, and it's a really good mindset, I think, that IT and OT departments they need to get into is to how can we support each other in being more successful, because there's a lot of talent on both sides of the fence there, and coming together to expand on those talents and really support each other, that's when things really thrive, and it sometimes takes a long time, like I said, to get there. And some of the other things too is budgets. A lot of times OT is very stringent on budgets, their maintenance budgets. A lot of times they get cut a lot of times, and they have to pivot. And why spend money on all this other stuff that they don't need if they're running right now, right? So there's a lot of angles, a lot of talk and those type of things that people don't understand. And it takes a long time to kind of get those things to change and be able to try to work together. And that's the biggest thing. So working together.
Right. Like you said, Kevin, like with the whole budget thing, that's where we go back to understanding everything on OT and what their agendas are, help to go in and do those assessments, and then help them to put a path forward, whether it's a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year remediation plan, whatever that looks like for them, and help to put that together for them and help them to drive their agenda, but also maybe highlight the highest risks to the business, and to be able to show them and steer them to say, we understand you want to do X, Y, and Z, but here's your highest risks. And these are the things we think you need to do first. A lot of times it aligns with what, the plant's trying to do. So then by putting those roadmaps together and understanding what their agendas are, and then helping them to fix that budget or to come up with that path forward, then it's easier to articulate that stuff upstream so that the C-level people can understand it, right? They may understand, that we need to get X amount in and X amount out in production. But when it comes to getting in the weeds and understanding all of the things to get there, it's easier for us to be able to articulate it in that way to make it, I guess, more palatable and understandable.
I think that's great. What should an organization evaluate first? The infrastructure, their data quality, cybersecurity, or organizational alignment?
So, you always want to know where your organizational alignment starts, right? Are we aligned? Are we not aligned? Understand that, right? And then that helps us to lead into what do we do next, and who's going to be the key players that are going to be involved in the next steps. And that next step is like assessing things. And we want to start with our infrastructure. So if you look it up today, it's like 70% or higher network problems are all caused by infrastructure issues. It's because it's cabled wrong. It's done wrong. It's physical. The foundation's built improperly. And so we start there. We start the next piece of the puzzle. After we have everybody aligned, we go after, what it is that we need to look at first. And so that is definitely the infrastructure. And so that's the next piece of the puzzle. Jackie, what were the other 2 or 3 items you said there? You said organizational alignment, your infrastructure, and then what other piece?
Cybersecurity and data quality.
Right. So once you understand what your infrastructure is, then we can start to talk about the cybersecurity piece of the puzzle. Because as we know, like I said before, IT is up against all the compliance stuff, and we need to make sure things are secure. So security goes hand in hand with what that infrastructure should look like. And then once you get all of the security and all of the infrastructure in place, then we can talk about what it is to get that quality data upstream. But without those foundational pieces of the puzzle, and you start to get and try to get data into that network, you're going to get missing pieces of the puzzle. It's kind of like the bridge is out at random times. And obviously, you can't drive across the bridge if the bridge is out. So it's kind of like a drawbridge in a sense. So is the bridge down or is the bridge up? And those are the problems that we run into with poor infrastructure.
I couldn't have said it better.
So I think you also sort of touched on this, but what role does standardized data play in successful AI initiatives?
So that's having everything normalized, and basically each line, each piece of equipment, you get the same type of information, so you can understand which one is lagging or which one's excelling, or where can we invest to improve and those type of things. So without having everything evened out across the board, with understanding the performance data from each type of equipment, you can't really make an informed decision on where to invest, that kind of thing. So that's kind of the data. That's one view of the data. The other view is intermittent data that's coming in, which comes down to infrastructure not being there to support it, and getting missing data and those type of things. There's a couple different forms of data quality there.
So one of the examples we had in the live session, it was a facility that had all these like cybersecurity protocols. And I think it was the only one where this scenario was actually AI ready. But many organizations still see cybersecurity as a roadblock to innovation because they need to be secure. So how does cybersecurity actually enable AI adoption and scale?
So you're talking about the scale, how to scale up basically, right?
Not looking at cybersecurity as something that is going to keep your facility secure while also allowing for innovation.
Yeah, that's kind of I guess a little bit of a myth, a little bit in some cases, right? People see security as roadblocks because you got to do all these extra things, right? Unfortunately, security is not always simple. There are some additional things and a different way to look at things when you are actually just performing daily functions. The things you did in the 1980s are different today. There's different threats. There's different vulnerabilities, and there's state-sanctioned actors out there, and people that are in companies and organizations that are organized that are attacking those type of things, and you have to be ready for those type of things. So putting in place layers in security is what really helps identify the anomalies inside those layers before it gets to critical layers like the OT layer itself. And so that's some of the things that you want to put in place. It takes a while to get there, right, with certain things. And again, it starts with an assessment. But getting that foundational infrastructure set up to support all those type of things is very, very important. But also when you apply the infrastructure, you need to apply it in a secured way. And so there's some philosophies and those type of things. And what we can do is help simplify how to get there by setting up a roadmap to success, basically. And so that's some of the main things as cybersecurity with issues. That's one way to look at it. Yeah.
So for a organization that is kind of just beginning or just getting started on their journey to becoming AI ready, what would you say are quick wins or low cost options that they could take to start down this path?
I think one of the things that a lot of people can do right out of the gate is to start by separating the IT and the OT with a firewall. It's probably going to be your least cost-effective thing. Even if you don't have all of the segmentation and things like that done in the OT side, you can at least put another firewall in or a couple firewalls in and follow the Purdue model where you have a DMZ, which is a demilitarized zone. And the goal there is that you've got a firewall out there at the edge coming into your facility that's supporting the security for the office area. But then the goal would be to put another firewall of a different brand, different make, model than what you have out at the edge to prevent, like Kevin was talking about, to prevent the infiltrations by having multiple layers of different types of technologies. Because if you continue with the same type of technology, and you can break down one wall, then you can break down the next and the next. And so the idea there is to make it as easy for everybody to manage as possible, but actually make it very difficult for the perpetrators to get through, because you're changing up the types of security and how you do it across the board, all the way down, all the way into the access layer of the network. And by doing that, you gain lots of visibility. Like Kevin said, I'll reiterate it, but when you have those multifaceted forms of security, then you have the ability to detect anomalies faster and to act on them and be proactive, rather than it gets through and you're infiltrated and, oh gosh, we're not in proactive mode anymore. We're now in reactive mode and we're down. and what are the down events going to cost us? And so, as we know, they cost.
Another angle to look at things too is what can you do now with basically having a design in place for a future state. And so if you're going to add equipment, add a line, make sure you add that firewall like Eric was talking about, but also anything new that you do, add it into in-game design that you want to do with the segmentation. Go ahead and segment the things that are new coming in, but leave the other stuff there for the migration plan you want to do over a period of time. So that's another thing you could do right away.
Yeah, a lot of times, Jackie, coming from our assessments, we're able to make those recommendations on what to do. And usually what happens is we go right into a design phase like Kevin was talking about, and we're able to put that part of that roadmap is a design. You can't build the house without a design or the building without a design at the end of the day. I mean, yeah, maybe there's some people out there that could do it, but I tell you what, it's going to be more effective if you've got literally a design. And our designs that we do are all validated designs. So we follow industry standards, right? Yes, we're using our expertise and our knowledge to give you recommendations at the end of the day, but we go back to industry standards every single time. Cisco validated designs, which is, the converged wide Ethernet standards with Rockwell and Cisco, and we follow that Purdue model. When we take those types of standards, we understand how your networks are laid out today, and we can implement and integrate the things that are there into those models and those designs to help get you to a state of secure, we'll call it, without basically the need for reinventing the wheel all the time. Now, there are some cases where we come in and do an assessment and things like that, and we understand that the infrastructure is not in a very good place, which we find more times than not, but that's okay. We have the ability to put that design together, go in and put in new infrastructures a lot of times side by side in facilities while they're running, therefore they don't incur any downtime. And then we work with them to create a migration plan of what areas are we going to bring onto the network little by little based upon the segmentation. Because we all know that even if we've got endless money, that we can't just come in and wave a magic wand and make everything connect right out of the gate. But with those phased approaches, allow the end user to do things that are cost effective as far as upgrades, and to be able to get them to a more compliant and secure state at the end of the day.
So one of the things I've heard you say and just working together on several projects from an ITOT assessment, clients get a roadmap that is helping them rank what to do first, what to do next, and where they're going to go. And I think we can do them for any sort of length, but I think most common, I feel like you guys say, is 3 years. How do you guys help an organization with this kind of roadmap phased approach balance the quick wins with their long-term transformation goals?
It's adaptive and understanding the company's goals and how fast they want to do things, budgets, revenue, current state. Well, there's a lot of things that go into this, even company procedures, human procedures, how we actually do things, operate on the system. Those are some of the things we look at as well. There's a lot of things to look at, right? So, and it's just understanding what the customer's goals and timing for the goals that they want to have. Sometimes, like Eric said earlier, compliance is a big one. If you want to have certain insurance compliance things and you have to hit those by such and such date, there's your roadmap. You need to respond within that period of time, right? So that's kind of a way I look at it.
Yeah. So what are some risks that a client may experience if they're trying to implement AI on a kind of unstable foundation or infrastructure?
Well, if you're adding more data to the system, sometimes that can basically create havoc on certain systems. There's a lot of systems that we've seen are so fragile that just putting a PC on the network, adding that extra just little bit of broadcast traffic takes down certain elements of the system. Some of these are very, very, very fragile. So the risk, without understanding what you have, it's risky. So,
well, and I assume if any data that it gives you is going to be incomplete because it wasn't built on a stable foundation.
Right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So missing data, sporadic data, a lot of these older systems, the focus was not the network. The focus was production. That's all it was. And so you have a lot of network sprawl. That's what we call it. When you're just continually adding more things to the problem. Okay. And the same network, same subnet, those type of things, and it gets out of control over a period of time, and it's not until and the maintenance are trying to keep these things running, right? They're doing all these things, jumping through all kinds of hoops to keep things going, and they need proper, I would say, design, understand how best to add those things in the future, because things over time have changed significantly.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I want to just make sure that I think, understand that all of these facilities have, as you said, they're running for production and were originally developed before this technology existed. So now I assume most manufacturers are kind of in this same situation of well, this is what we had, this is what worked, but now we have this technology that we want to take advantage of, but I guess doing it the correct way so you can take the most advantage of it is important. What is the most common misconception companies have about being AI ready?
Misconception? I don't necessarily know what the misconceptions would be, other than some of the things we've already talked about. They think whether they think they're AI ready when they're really not. I think that's probably the biggest misconception, is they feel like they're ready to go and they're just not there. I mean, they're playing the Jenga out in the plant. And, eventually it gets to a point where, the thing's going to fall over. It's going to crash at the end of the day. I feel like that's what's going on. And I feel like I don't think there's a lot of people out there that don't understand what's going on in their OT environment, as long as they're making widgets and they're wanting all of this AI. They're wanting all the reporting, the analytics, which rightfully so. With that information, we're going to be able to produce more. And that's the goal at the end of the day. It's difficult. We find it very difficult to come up to management and say, hey, we need to replace some of these obsolete items and things like that. And it's easy for management to say, well, it's working. Do you have a spare? I know it's obsolete, but by changing it, is it going to make us any more widgets? Or is it going to make more widgets faster? What's the return on investment? And sometimes when it comes to networks and things like that, there hasn't been a whole lot of return on investment for it until now, where now we can try to get a plant to where it's AI ready, or where we're starting to use AI to have predictive maintenance, things like that, where we don't necessarily need, individuals watching the stuff. So considering we don't have the staffing, then the AI can actually come in and kind of pick up the slack a little bit, some of that tribal knowledge that we can't find anymore because it's aging out.
What's a common mistake teams should avoid during an IT/OT assessment?
You're saying the people administering the assessments or someone trying to do it themselves? I
think either way.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah. So a lot of this has to do with experience, because we may have done these things a few times in the past, but it's understanding the equipment that's there, looking for things like PLC5s, SLC 505s, older equipment, even some TI stuff. There's just different types of equipment you got to look at and understand how it's connected to the network, and know if you can do a scan, those type of things. Some of the other things is scanning tools that are used. A lot of people may already have some experience with having an IT scan on their OT network, and it takes the whole system down, right? That's some of the big hurdles that people are concerned with. And so when you go to touch an OT system, it's very important to understand what it is you're working with, what's there before you even touch it. You have to kind of look at that and evaluate things beforehand and say, is it worth the risk to scan it? We've gone to a lot of systems where it's like, don't touch it. We've seen full PLC5 systems with like eight PLC5s on there with all kinds of remote IO and everything, and they're having all these issues. Like, I can't add one more thing to that system, and let alone try to do a scan. It's just not going to work. But we already know what we know by going out and taking a look at it, seeing what we see. We can already assess that. So there's the way you assess things depends on the system that you have in front of you and what you can do in those type of things. Downtime, if the system's running, most of the time when we're working with systems, it's always running. It's always up. Most of the time an OT system's up. So we have to be very conscious of that. If we can get a downtime window, yeah, we can scan it, as long as it's not going to break a refrigeration system or something like that. That's working, because we've seen that too. You have to be careful. Those type of things, not personal experience. I'm just kidding. You have to be very careful when you're scanning a system and understand what's there.
It sounds like you have a lot of stories.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of different things, Jackie. We come in a lot of times to pick up the pieces where other people have done those types of things that we're talking about because we use specialized tools. Like if we do a scan in an OT environment, it's not the same type of a scan that we do on an IT side of the network because the scanning tools that we use on the IT side of the network can go out there and look at all the devices all at once and kind of capture all that information very, very rapidly. However, if we try to use those types of tools on an OT environment and try to ask all the devices who they are, what they are, where they're located, and all the information all at once, everybody's going to try to report back in and everything's going to go haywire and it's going to crash that network and it's going to stop production almost every single time. And we're called in many, many times to come in and fix the problem because somebody has unleashed the Kraken on the OT and hasn't stopped it. And so it keeps causing problems. And so we come in and we find these things that Kevin's talking about now where we got to be very cautious and we've seen things like refrigeration things been down or ammonia systems be down or just all kinds of things and there's dangers, there's risks to the business, there's risks to people. So our engineers are very, very, very skilled and understanding all of those risks and all of the hurdles and things that we need to know before we even go in and touch anything.
I feel like we've talked a lot about kind of how to get started and kind of beginning with an assessment and getting that foundation ready so that you can officially be AI ready and ready to kind of take advantage of what AI can bring to a facility. But looking ahead to the kind of the generation that's coming into the workforce now, what do you think would be good kind of practical training or skills that someone just entering the workforce should focus on so they can, I guess, kind of either work in an OT environment or take advantage of AI? I'll leave it open-ended and however you would like to answer the question.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Kevin's probably got his own thoughts on this too, but I mean, if you're getting into this field and you're thinking about, what are the things that I could do to help people get to an AI ready state, I think the biggest thing is we harp on infrastructure. And if you're getting into the IT space at all, you need to understand the differences between IT infrastructure and OT infrastructure. And they are very different things, very different animals at the end of the day. The types of wiring, the types of things that we do in the OT environment do not exist in the IT environment. A lot of people think that they can run cable because they run cable or done things in the IT environment. And then when you get out there in the OT world and then they understand it later and they're like, oh my gosh, I learned all these different things and I'm so glad I didn't do that. Or they learn trial by fire where they've gone out, put an infrastructure in. We had a particular customer who I know very well that actually had gone in and their IT folks had cabled everything and they were very, very proud of it. But they kept running into all these problems and these anomalies. And we went in and showed them and then gave them a better understanding of what was really going on. And then they really, once they understood it, they were like, my goodness, I wish we would have really engaged you guys sooner because we had to now spend a lot more money after they had already spent a good considerable amount of money to go back in and redo everything that they had done just the year prior. So a lot of costs incurred by not hiring the right people, or even at least engaging the right people to start to have the conversation. I think that's a big deal, right?
Another perspective is if you're coming to workforce is adopt change. Be ready to understand things and change. And like Eric said, there's a lot of different ways to do things, but looking at the standards, the reason standards exist is because it eliminates a lot of issues that have been learned over the years by many people that these standards, TA standards organizations, those type of things exist for a reason. The reason is to try to make things easier to prevent problems from happening. And that's why it's really important to kind of understand the standards. So not just infrastructure standards, but security standards and how those security standards affect the infrastructure. Because like Eric said, they did a lot of things at that one plant and they had to pivot later. And a lot of people think, well, I'm just going to run some network cable down here and they'll figure it out later. Well, it's real important to understand the beginning of what your goals are with cybersecurity and where you want to go with things, because some infrastructure designs have additional cables required. And if you run, a lot of times when you're doing a drop, running 2 drops, it only costs maybe 10% more to run the second drop because there's a lot of labor involved to run that drop. So, you might think about those things too. There's resiliency, there's redundancy, there's all kinds of things that you might be interested in for the type of process that you do. Understanding a downtime event, what that incurs on the system and those type of things. So putting those costs involved with back in the design, you can back that into design, and it really kind of helps drive things to get you to the actual end state that's best for you, that what works for this system, and is in budget as well.
Well, that is, I feel like awesome. I feel like I've covered all of my questions around the AI Ready or Not session. I want to thank you guys for being here. I do have 2 questions that I want to close on that are my fun questions. And the first one is, what is one AI myth that you wish would disappear?
I would say one AI myth that I think is that we can just go out and get some AI and just drop it in there and it's going to solve all of our problems. That's a myth. That's not that simple.
What about you, Kevin?
You can replace the entire workforce with AI.
That is a good one too. From what you have seen thus far, what's the coolest use of AI in a manufacturing environment that you've seen recently?
Troubleshooting.
It's a good one.
Yep. I think troubleshooting is a big one. I think I saw another one, Kevin, where somebody was making blown glass bottles and they used AI. So it took a human a lot of time to go in and adjust the twist on the bottle or the shape or the size or whatever the glass bottle was. The environment was horrible because it's hot, and it would take somebody with a lot of experience to know what things to manipulate on machine. And so they took and did an analysis and figured out how to kind of automate it and implement AI to make those changes. And those changes that were taking, like, I don't know, I'm going to guess from memory, an hour or so to make, or maybe 20 minutes to make, they were making in just seconds. So if something came off, variation came off just ever so slightly, the AI was actually, in this particular test, that was very, very isolated in a very, they put a box around it, because, safety and things of that nature, they were actually letting it be like more than predictive AI, right? They were using generative AI to actually make decisions for somebody, because it created a lot of good things, and it allowed to free up that individual to do something else other than be in a dangerous kind of a situation or a hot situation, right?
Wow. Yeah, that is very cool. Okay. I have one final question is, what would you like to see us cover on a future episode of Beyond Tech?
Like, what would I want to see? I don't know. I'd want to see maybe something around, like, I don't know. Yeah, I always want to I always want to talk about cybersecurity and compliance, but I think those are big deals at the end of the day. What are the things that you're doing? How are you working? Maybe how are you working with your IT department today? How are you bridging the gap, or the
Well,
need to bridge the gap between IT and OT? I think that's probably a bigger topic at the end of the day, because we are, bridging that gap every day, and we have to do it to get where we got to get to. It just has to happen. So I
yeah,
figure
it's not really an option anymore. They have
it's
to work
not.
together.
It really isn't. People are starting to realize it. Slow.
Yeah. Well, change is hard. What about you, Kevin? Or did we take all your good
I
ideas?
agree. Yeah, I agree that it's maybe coming to the table with some of the questions and answers, actually having some information on both sides to support what things can each department, those type of things, support each other on, those type of things. That's what I would think would be a really helpful one. Yeah.
Well, that's great.
Collaboration.
I want to thank you guys for collaborating with me today on this episode. I do not have anything else, but just thanks for spending an hour with me.
No problem.
Thanks.
That's what we're here for. At the end of the day, we want to try to get the word out. We want to help people. That's what we love doing.
Yep.
So it's fun.
Yeah, I always enjoy talking to anyone on our team that agrees to come on a podcast episode with me.